Welcome to the Getting High on Leadership series featuring Paul Karasik. Paul is one of America's top management consultants helping leaders succeed. He is the author of 9 books, including Sweet Persuasion and Brilliant Thoughts and Provocative Questions. His insights appear regularly in major publications, and he is one of the most sought-after executive coaches. Paul founded the American Seminar Leaders Association and the Psychedelic Institute of Los Angeles. He is a popular speaker at national conferences and has been on stages across all 50 states and internationally. Paul's work addresses the question, how can we transform conflict in business into collaboration? With decades of experience in management, leadership, and psychedelics, he brings a unique perspective on personal and societal growth. In this series, we'll be discussing his latest book, Getting High on Leadership, The Leader's Guide to Higher Consciousness. We'll be exploring the concepts, techniques, and mindset required to revolutionize leadership. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Getting High on Leadership series. My name is Sanchez, your host, and sitting next to me here is Paul Karasik, the author of Getting High on Leadership. Paul and I are exploring his book section by section, and today we're looking at creating a winning team, which can be found on page 71 if you'd like to follow along. Paul, welcome, man. Let's talk about winning. Obviously, leadership is tied pretty heavily to winning, or it can be maybe reduced to that often, and it always relies on the team. And how can those things start to come together or start to build that story we've been talking about in part 2 around values and team culture?
Yeah, Rob, I think this chapter highlights one of the biggest black holes in organizations today. And what do I mean by that? The average leader thinks of themselves as better than the people that they're leading. The average leader thinks they're better in some way than the people they're leading. And that is the greatest mistake. And it's highlighting a whole turnabout in organizations today. The old system for running a group, an organization, a company, whatever the case, was called command and control. And that's the military model.
Right. Very hierarchical, top-down.
Hierarchical, patriarchal, go to war, you go there, you go fight. I sit back here and tell you to go to war and root you on and hope you come back. And that's really what's run since the Industrial Revolution, the basic structure of organizations. And we see it in schools too. We see it in all kinds of other areas, this kind of command and control. So the teacher knows and the students don't. And I think that's absurd. I think children are so wise and so bright and so in tune and usually more intelligent than the teacher. I mean, in terms of IQ, succeeding generations tend to be more intelligent than preceding. Like my kids are smarter than me. And, that's just the facts of it. So you see this command and control everywhere in our culture, and
it does kind of gloss over the team itself or that intellect of the people who you're actually leading.
Yeah, the intellect, the heart, it glosses over everything. It diminishes everyone. And what we're saying in this particular chapter is that there's a new model, and it's called collegial, collaborative, connecting. And that's what the conscious leader goes to. And why does the conscious leader go to that? Because in the core of everybody is the same consciousness, the same access to things we've talked about in previous chapters, like the universal mind, universal intelligence, which is greater than individual intelligence. Well, every single person in that group, in that team, on that particular mission has access to the same wisdom as the leader, correct? Right? So why would the leader speak to the other person in a diminished way? What I want to do is I want to get engagement from that person. I want
Yeah.
to mine their history. I want to mine their experience. I want to mine their intelligence. I want to mine their access to that universal intelligence.
Because that's why you
Right?
hired them in the first place,
That's
right?
why I hired them.
It wasn't to just have a yes man.
No, not real. No, well,
And if it was, maybe that's a different problem.
yeah, and unfortunately, that's what the case is. Many of the time, I want you to do that. Shut up and get it done, and come back here, and tell me you got it done, or don't tell me anything.
Yeah. Oh man, I couldn't. I can name many middle managers that I will not name that have done this exact thing in my entire tenure working with them. That really made me find a new job quick. Every time I realized it was that kind of manager, or it was that kind of guy, or it was like, hey, no, do X. And if I thought Y, it was like, at least the good managers hear me out. At least they give me a chance to speak. But if someone was going to crack the whip and kind of keep on task managing, that's often a bad sign. So it is a prevalent thing in tech, in software, in team organizations like project management, and even in the hierarchies like within CEOs and department leaders. It can get bad really quickly as soon as this becomes the norm for your business.
It takes the morale out, as I point out in this chapter. It drains all of that juice that people bring, to events and to activities.
And instead, you just get like the tension of like people feeling inauthentic and feeling bad in some kind of way about their role in their job within the organization, which is just, it's so far from actually winning that you're on a different path entirely by that point. So I think some things we've mentioned in the show already around humility as a leader, and I think that is just
that's a good point.
A striking point within this section. That you can't be generous or accept the intellect of your followers or of your team if you're not somewhat humble. That's kind
true.
of the first domino, maybe. I guess there's probably dominoes before humility, but that's a pretty important one to really enact any of this in your teams or in the situations where you're leading.
Yeah, you that value, that personal value of humility is the door opener. You're right. You're absolutely right. That you have to see that. There's a quote from a book that I love. And I'm going to mess it up, but basically it says the only true art is seeing clearly that consciousness that exists in the other person, that universal consciousness. Like when I look at you, not to see the historical entity called Rob that came from so-and-so that has a history and so on and so forth, but the only true art is to see you as that human expression of divine consciousness, of universal consciousness. And that's what this chapter is asking you to do. So when I look at you, not see you as somebody who works on software and does this activity, and you're going to play that role in this thing, and you do that, you write the thing that such and such. And those are technical things that everybody's doing. But where does innovation come from? Where does creativity come from? Where do new ideas come from? They come from that universal consciousness that we all have, that higher consciousness that we all have, and we all have access to. So I want the ideas to come from my people, not from me. I want to create, an environment where they want to contribute. You know who is master of this was Walt Disney. No way. So he would get together the team, and he would say, So they're all animators, right? They draw, and everybody on the team, and he was an animator, right? And he would say, "Okay, Sleepy is gonna like fall asleep while Snow White is talking, and then somebody's gonna give him an elbow and wake him up." And all those ideas, they didn't come from the writers; they came from the animators. They said, "Wait a minute, the animators, they're creating these characters. They probably have some great ideas," and he would actually incentivize them. So if
Like
somebody
their
came,
mannerisms or their little
oh,
actions throughout the story that the writers wrote.
they were getting paid to contribute to what the writers wrote
Yeah.
visually. He wasn't saying, "I know what should happen. Let's have the writers have. Let's have all the animators. Now I've got 10 people thinking up these great ideas, and I can take all the funniest stuff and put them in the movie." And if you look at those movies, you'll see lots of these little spots where there's a little joke, or the bird kind of flutters and then falls to the ground, or like whatever those little jokes and those little things were. That was created by the team, and that's why Disney was so successful. Not he didn't have the ideas. He tapped the team. He tapped all these animators that were just as accessible to that funny stuff as any writer, as Walt Disney. But that's what we're talking about here. And
Right.
so, if he would have said, "Okay, animate these scenes," here's the story of Snow White.
Yeah. You would just
That would
get like two dwarves standing still and the
two
story's
dwarfs.
told, right? The credits
Yeah.
will roll, but you won't feel the same way at the end. And
It would never have been. No, it would never.
And I've
have
seen
been
that happen even in work sometimes, like in the workplace, where you would ask for something, and the devs or whoever you ask for it from, they'll deliver that. But if you're not careful, or if you're not tapped in on the culture side of things, what you ask for is just going to come exactly what you asked for. There's no forethought at all. It doesn't matter if maybe one of the instructions was wrong. They just did that instruction, and here it is for you. And you need that kind of value, that team mentality, or that value of quality on those teams, so that if you miss an instruction and ask for something stupid, that they don't build you something stupid, right? That they actually ask some questions or have some say in it, some initiative. So I've seen
Exactly.
it on that scale too, and it can be expensive if you let that problem last.
No, that's a great point. If you're conscious and you're engaged with higher consciousness, what you want primarily is your team to be conscious, so that they're catching mistakes. They're not just doing that rote kind of mechanical produce. I want them to think right. One of the things that I always say in my programs is, I can teach you lots of skills and so on about leadership or whatever, but what I really want you to do is think right. Because if you think right, then you're going to find the results. You're going to come up with solutions, not me giving you the solutions. And so this is about the leader thinking right. And the leader has to think, how do I tap the intelligence of my people? Everybody that works for me. How do I what kind of an environment do I have to create for them to want to think for me, to come up with the ideas? What do I have to say to them to get them to engage with me, to give me those ideas and those new things? And that's what the conscious leader needs to be thinking about. How do I get this collaborative model working? And let me give you the secret. We don't have to mess around here. You have to ask for it. Sue, what do you think? Do you have any other ideas on that? That's got to be the way you do things on a regular basis. It's always asking, even with this series that we've created, we're a team. And
yeah, right. We've got to, and like the calls, that gets started where we have to do a little admin work first, right? There's some questions there.
There's always questions, and how do you see it going? And what's the best way we can approach this, and discussion.
Yeah.
And not in some sort of like, offhand way. What does everybody think? And then the leader goes back and does it just the way they wanted to do it to begin with. Like, so
Right.
that's
There's
counterproductive.
it has to be asked for candidly and acted on candidly.
It needs to be sincere, and it's just to put a bow on this chapter. It's about recognizing the genius that exists in everybody. That's the secret to creating a winning team. And and I've said this before, but it's worth mentioning because we have a lot of folks watching this. People don't leave their job because of the money. They 99% of the time, they leave because they feel disrespected. They feel because they're not getting recognized. They feel because they're being diminished. They feel because they're not being appreciated. It's their feelings that make them quit, not the money. And by the way, this is every management study ever done. So by saying, what do you think? That's when they feel respected. And again, I'm not saying do this stuff to achieve something. I'm saying embrace it like just a natural way to do things and get comfortable with that. Of engaging, asking, opinions, ideas, respect. They'll feel good. And the enterprise will prosper, whatever it is, because you're getting input not just from one person. And if they're the same values as you, those ideas are usually pretty applicable. And
Yeah. No, I definitely see that, and I think that is the takeaway point for this section is to look at those teams you have, look at those underlying values, make sure to address the team that you're building, and have your own internal values defined so that you can help others find theirs, and tap into that greatness that teams can provide. Right? You don't want to take it for granted. You want to take advantage of the fact that you have this team ready to solve a problem or help you accomplish a goal. Thank you all for listening and watching, and thank you, Paul, for the wisdom here as always, and we'll see you on the next section. You can find the link below to buy the book and to follow along with us if you'd like. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Getting High on Leadership series. If you have any questions, you can comment below or send them in via email to paul@paulkarasik.com. Follow him on Instagram at PK_the conversation. Find out more at wholesalerinstitute.com and psychedelic-awakening.com. The Getting High on Leadership series is produced by Rob Sanchez and Apartment 113, which can be found at apartment113.com and followed on Instagram at APT_113.